guy I was just talking to, he's actually one of the deans here.
Oh.
We met him we all took an Italian class together because they have some classes for employees here, and my wife's an employee at the school, and we all took a language class together and started just hanging out.
And you needed that Italian for Vienna. Wait a minute.
Yeah, no, for earlier trips.
Oh, that's right. You went to Rome, didn't you?
Yeah, no, we've actually been to Italy 3 times in the last 5 years. But it's interesting. He is the dean of one of the colleges here. We hadn't seen him in a while. Last time I talked to him, I knew he was on the verge of going away. In fact,
You should harass him. Say, what are you doing here?
Well, I thought I saw in the paper that he wasn't there anymore. But
well,
it's a very indelicate question to ask.
It's all the more reason to ask it, right?
No, we're going to get together.
Good.
Okay.
I can introduce.
No, that's fine. Okay, I think we're just about ready to get started here. It's 2:40. My name is Steve Kaminsky. I'm with Front Range Community College. Technically, I'm one of the faculty that's been designated as the D2L mentor. So I'm supposed to know what I'm doing with D2L. So we'll see. I'm actually a computer science instructor. I've been with Front Range a long time. So today we're going to talk about this tool called the Learning Object Repository. It's a separate optional tool as part of D2L. It can be purchased or not purchased. The State of Colorado Community College System purchased it, and we're trying to figure out how best to use it. I want to talk about what it does, how it works, and what we've done so far at Front Range Community College to explore it, which actually isn't a lot. I think we understand a lot of what it could do. We haven't put it to use yet. And so we'll talk about some of the ways that we might put it to good use. And I'm going to share some of the things I've found. I joined a special users group within Desire2Learn community. I've got some good sources here of people across the world that have been working this. So I'll pass those on near the end of the presentation. The Learning Object Repository, think of it as a warehouse, a place to store stuff, a lot of stuff. And it's packaged content that will store for Desire2Learn courses. This is a common place to put things out to share. The reasons for using it are to centralize and not store multiple copies of the same thing. We internally have found that I'm a bad example. I've got these nice videos I've put together for my courses, and I teach several courses every semester, and I've taught Desire2Learn for 4 semesters now. And guess what? There's 27 copies of my nice video out there, all occupying space. So, yeah, we can centralize content. We can share the materials that we develop. And actually, you can restrict this too. This, as you'll see later, this is something where a department could define some special things they might use and keep it only within their own department. Our math department is going to be a good example of that. We can share objects externally, and there is access to external repositories like Merlot. We can use this as a good front end to some open access type repositories. Bottom line is you can publish almost anything that can be used in Desire2Learn as content. Okay, a couple pros and cons off the top. I want to make sure these are clear because it's not a given that we're even going to use this. This is all in the stage that we're trying to decide, is it really worth the money? Is it really worth what we're going to do? The pros are saving space. Number one for us, I think, is going to be saving just the sheer storage space, providing simple access, reducing the preparation time for courses, and hopefully improving the quality of content, getting good content in all the hands of the instructors. The cons, there's some real technical problems. If you get some content that's got references off to files and videos that in turn reference to other files and videos, it can't handle everything. You can make things too complicated to get out there. A more important conceptual problem is going to be the reluctance of some of our instructors to share material so wide open. They put a lot of time into the courses. They put a lot of time in the materials. There's some, I consider, a little surprising resistance to sharing this. So we have to think about ways of mitigating that. There's legal rights. This doesn't do anything about making the problems of who has legal access to copyrighted material any easier. It gives us ways to store the information and use it, but there's no magic answer. There can be some complicated rights about which courses can use which material, especially if it's copyrighted for a specific textbook or a series of textbooks. None of that gets any easier, but there are ways to store that information. It's somewhat labor intensive to capture all the data about this data. Eventually, there's going to be a big repository of thousands of items. You got to find what you need by searching for it. There has to be some data there to search. And I think that's a bit of a problem from what I've seen in these meetings with this committee within Desire2Learn schools. Just getting that data captured well is a real challenge. One more click here. In our world, this is a real chicken and egg problem. If it was there, if there were 3,000 good lessons out there, people would love to use it. But they're not. We have to develop it and get those lessons out there. And they're not used to using such a thing yet. So it's going to take a while. I was going to put a subtitle on this presentation of how to hatch a chicken without laying an egg, but I said, okay, that's too much. I'm not going to do that. Okay, how does it work? Number one, it's a place to store stuff. It's a place to store packaged educational content. It's a way to locate that stored content. This image there, I'm always reminded of the last scene of the Indiana Jones movie when there's just boxes and boxes everywhere. And it's a way to get that content to a Desire2Learn class. The content itself is content in terms of what Desire2Learn calls content. For those of you that are already into Desire2Learn, a content it could be a module, could be one topic within a content, it could be just one file. And just from a terminology point of view, when we're storing a single file, unrelated file out here, we call it an asset. That's just the word they picked for it. We can also store quizzes and question libraries. It's not a place to store some of the other tools in Desire2Learn. You can't store Dropboxes, discussions, grades, or news items. Now, I've actually cheated on that and figured out how to dump those out to a file and then store that file as an asset, but that's just playing around with it. And it's not intended to store those intact. It's intended to store content. There are many repositories like with publishers and things, but no, this is the repository. This is the common place to store things like that.
Would you say that a single course can have a question library, but it's not shared between courses?
This is a place in the middle where all sorts of courses could make their own question libraries available for others to use.
Would you say that again? It won't store quizzes? What were the other things?
Let's go back a second. The question is, what won't it do? It'll store quizzes and question libraries just fine. What it won't store are the Dropboxes. You know, the Dropbox is the place for homework assignments to be dropped off. It won't store discussion information. It won't store the grades, the grades tool settings of a course, and the news items that you post. Those are 4 specific tools within Desire2Learn. And it's not intended for that. It's intended for content and quizzes. You can store these learning objects most typically from a Desire2Learn course. You set up a course with content, and you take the content from that course and put it out in the repository so that others can see it and use it. You can also go straightly from files on your computer. You can take e-learning kind of things and publish that directly. You can take things that have been exported from Desire2Learn or other systems and put that out there. The correct terminology for this is that we publish these objects to the repository. Question, yeah. The question is, what does it look like? And you're going to see it in just a couple seconds here. Nope. I got several examples. And just like Jim did, I captured a lot in screen captures, and I've also got a live connection here. To deliver the objects are out there. They're out there ready to be used, and you find them. You can bring them into the courses. We call it courses section, so you can bring it into the course. And you can bring it in either as a link to the object in the repository. So you're just really pointing to it. You're not really copying it. Or you can actually bring a copy in. Depending on your privileges and the settings, we can copy it in. We can link to it. And the links can be either dynamic, meaning always give me the most recent version, the current version, or it can be fixed. Let me have that one, and if a newer version comes, I don't want the newer version, I want the original. And you can choose that as you make the link in the first place. So how do you find a useful object? This is tricky. This is why this metadata needs to exist. Metadata is simply a term for data about the data. We search metadata to find objects that might be useful. Metadata categorizes, identifies objects. There's a lot of fields available. They support, actually this right here, the IEEE Learning Object Metadata, version 1.0, is this god-awfully large set of data that's got everything you could ever conceive of for data about an educational item. And it supports all that, or some subset of that. And that's where it gets tricky. We need to define how much data do we really care about to go search for it. What's it look like? And in reality, do I need to find just all the computer science lessons? From my point of view, for the foreseeable future, I just want to find all the stuff that's about computer science. Or maybe about a programming language, but a few keywords will go a long way for me. As you'll see, there's a lot of options here. Here's a sample view of the metadata, a simple view of what this looks like. I put out an item here, which is a nice set of podcasts that one of our economics instructors put together. As part of exploring this, I put this in our repository. And you can see we can, at the simplest, we can have titles, we can have descriptions, we can have keywords. Now, there's several different groupings. Yeah, question. Oh, it's coming. There's places for it. Pardon? It says by CCCS, the Colorado Community College System, and yeah, you know, I don't have the authority just to hand it to you on the side and say go use it without getting permission. It's not mine to give away. It belongs to the college system. Now, we've also said that the authors have here's the official position of our school. The school owns it, but the author has all the right. We'll let them do whatever they want with it. We're granting them the rights to it. If they want to publish it or put it in a textbook or do whatever, they can. Now, do they have the right just to copy it indiscriminately to everybody else? Maybe. I'm out of my element here, but you can have my stuff. I'll be happy to give it to you. No, this is just a catch-all that we put on there. Yeah.
Just to speak to your question, this learning object repository for Front Range Community College can't be searched by somebody outside our institution.
No, this is not yet public. And in fact, in a minute here, the questions, by the way, for the sake of the recording, are all about the rights, and we'll talk about that in a minute and how we look at the access. But this is for people that are logged into our Desire2Learn system in some sort of role. So you'd have to be logged into our system to even see this. Okay, real quickly here, I'm going to. Yeah, we'll talk about views in a second here. Real quickly, I'll step through the kinds of things that are here just to give you a feel for the detail that's available. And from my experience in working with this subcommittee of schools that use this tool, hardly anybody is using all this range of detail. It's sort of an overkill, but it's all available. And let's just step through this fairly quickly. There's general information, title, catalog, keywords. Next, life cycle, like is this a final version? Is this a developmental version? Is this in draft? Is this experimental? Technical, this is actually quite valuable. What's in here? Has it got PDF files? Has it got HTML files? Has Has it got a database? Has it got a soft chalk lesson? You know, this is where you would capture that information.
And the person that's creating it and publishing it to is the one that decides.
Well, that's a key question. The question is, who's responsible for populating this? That's a key question about process. We can make Jim do it, and Jim and his people. You know, we can make me do it. I'm one of the online leads. I'm responsible for 15, 20 teachers, and they could all come to me and make me do it. I could lobby that they have the rights to do it, but some of them are going to mess it up. So I haven't got an answer other than any combination of things is possible. You'll see in a minute here, but it's a procedural thing that each school would have to decide. Okay, you can copy everything about the rights. You can copy classifications more like pedagogical classification. Excuse me, and educational in here. You know, is this a lecture? Is it a quiz? What is this? The point on that is that there's more than enough places to put almost any kind of data. I think most schools are going to have the issue of what don't we do? You know, how much do we keep or not? And we can define individual views as say, show this data, but forget about the rest. And that's what we'll attempt to do. So what have we done so far? We've gotten our feet wet with this. I defined a project in the spring. We have some internal grants that we call Teaching with Technology. Got a little bit of funding, and I funded several teachers to go play with this. We published objects in the one repository that we created, one master repository for the school. And we exercised the features, tried to find what works, what doesn't work. What are we going to do with this thing? Now, more recently, this summer, mostly in anticipation of giving this presentation, I've been in here and also in response to the Fusion Conference. I went to the Fusion Conference in Denver and got some very nice feedback from these other committee members and from the Desire2Learn people about some possible configurations. And I've actually put together several different learning object repositories in the system just to show that. Go ahead and step past that. Now, let me drive for a second about doing some examples here. Just like with Jim, I've got a lot of this on screen capture, but here I'm logged into the Front Range Desire2Learn system. And down below here shows the courses. I've got this blown up a little bit, so it usually presents a little better than that. But I've got several different roles. I'm what's called an online lead. I'm in charge of a lot of teachers and a lot of courses. I'm also, I joke about this, instructor HP I call a high-powered instructor. HP actually stood for homepage. When we first brought the system up, we let instructors modify their own homepages and other things. And then we backed off of that and said, no, everybody's going to look the same. Well, a few of us got to keep our privileges so we could play with some of the options that not every teacher got to play with. Well, that's the role I've used a lot here. You'll see in a second about how this comes into play. I'm also an instructor for the two courses that I'm still teaching this summer. But underneath Instructor HP, I've enrolled myself as, I'm very versatile all of a sudden. I'm teaching my own, this is my own course from the spring, Computer Science 1. I also now apparently am teaching economics and math and philosophy. We also set up a particular training course here to explore the D2L tools. And that's what I'm going to get into for the moment here. This is a course that can do anything. You know, this course has the privilege to do anything, and they worry a little bit about us, but we have fun with it. There's a simple widget here called the LOR widget, which is going to let me go out and search the repositories I've already created. So I'm going to go out and click on search. And there's not a lot of volume here, but there's getting to be some variety. I've created, in addition to the original FRCC repository, which is what we simply call the first big fat repository that we played with, I've created some extra ones here. And we'll talk a minute about the strategies of this. Question? Right. The question is it right here in my instance? Yeah. As long as all the privileges are set right, I can automatically see it and use it. It's sitting on a server somewhere at D2L. We buy our services from them. We, the state of Colorado community colleges. But no, it's just there. Whether I see it or not all comes down to the privileges and trusts we're going to talk about in a second. And it's really just like one great big content area. It's not unlike the content area that you see in every course. It's just one great big giant place to put stuff. And I can tell by poking at some of their links and details that that's how they've implemented it. It's like just one big content area.
Is there a way for people to upload their learning objects and then have them automatically show up also in the FRCC repository?
Yep. I mean, we'll see in a second here. If I'm somebody who can publish to a repository, I can publish to any of them. In fact, let's go ahead and let me just do a quick search. These are all selected, and it's going to come back. And since I didn't search for anything in particular, it's going to find everything. Now, if we had thousands of items, this would be a difficulty. We've only got dozens so far, but there's some nice stuff out here. There's some sample quizzes. There's some sample course material. This is the content for my entire Computer Science 1 course. This is an example of how I got around that thing about graded discussions. I took all the discussions and exported them to a file and stuck that file up there. So with the proper instruction, I can bring it back down and reload it. This is a course. We have a course we call a capstone course that students do as a final course, and this is a packaged version of that. I got tired of doing this multiple times, so I put this out here for all my teachers, and it's a 1-credit course that demonstrates proficiency in the Microsoft Office products. But it's all content. It's all set, and it's ready to go. The next time a computer science instructor needs this for the sake of a student, they just go to it and pull it down. That's the kind of idea that could make this useful. The kinds of things I can do with this here, so I want to be careful not to get out of my order. Now, if I were in a course, and I am in this course here, in fact, let me back off a second. Let me do this right. I'm going to go back off and go to a given course. I'm going to go to Computer Science 1. This is actually my real spring course. I'm putting stuff left and right in here. I'll go to my content, and I've got a special content module called Exercising the Experimental LORs. And I've brought content in from all over the place, from the content that I published from a philosophy course, content I published from a math course. If I wanted to bring something in from the repository, I start right here, Add Learning Object. There's a nice link here. I just click that, and it brings me up into this search window again. And let's say I want to find, I'm going to type algebra, which doesn't make sense in computer science, but I'll do it anyway. If I can type. I'm going to search all the repositories for algebra, and I know I'm going to hit a nice item that I published out there called Installing GeoGebra. GeoGebra is an external tool that our math department uses for, I assume, for geometry and algebra. I'm going to select that and click on Next. Oh, in fact, I'm going to look at the details here. This shows a little bit about it. It's a Desire2Learn module. There's the real honest-to-God URL to where that's sitting out on the server. And anything, there's nothing magic about these rights. I typed this in for everything. I'm going to go through here, and I've got the rights to preview this. I can bring this up. I can view its details, and I can view its metadata. The metadata for this is the data about this. It's got a title. It's got its description. It's got some keywords. This is a simple set of data that I put in here that makes sense for this. This emulates what somebody would have put in when they first published this. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and click on Next. And I have the options to either create a link to this data, a link to this content, or I can either create a link that's a dynamic link, meaning if it gets updated, I get the updates. I can create a locked link, which means once I do it now, it's going to be this way forever. I'm not going to be messed up by any changes to it. And I can actually import it. I've got it set here where I can bring this down and copy this completely into my course. I'm going to set a dynamic link to it, and I'm going to put it in this module called Exercising Experimental LORs, and I'm going to say create a link. And it's going out there, and it's doing exactly that. It's making a link to that content that's stored in the repository. And it is now in my course here, installing GeoGebra. If I go through and view the content of this course, I happen to know that this is two nice things that one of our math teachers, Jim Voss, put together. First off, there's a link to this site, and this is a link out to the site that is used for students to download this third-party tool. And there's some instructions. There's a video, a screencast video that Jim put together that explains just how to do this. And I'll turn that on to get it started. We won't go too far with it.
This video will be a quick introduction to the graphing software GeoGebra. You can get this from geogebra.org.
And we'll stop that right there. And that's it. And this is the kind of thing where Jim has done a good job of putting this together. And I got a feeling every one of our 14 sections of Math 121 will probably want to use this. And so they just have to link to it just like I did. And now it's out there, it's shared, it's available. And one person did the work and the other 13 got the advantage of it. That's where we hope this is going to pay off, that kind of thing. Okay. Let's get back into the presentation here, because actually some of the presentation is going to be better examples. I showed that just to show the what does work here, but going through, this is just what I did a second ago, searching for content and bringing up the content here. Let's see, let me step back 1 second here. I had a little strategy of this. Okay. So I'm in Manage Content. I'm going to click on Add Learning Object. I'm going to find something of use. I'm going to go search for it. And I'm searching two different LORs. Notice that I'm seeing 4. And we'll talk a minute here about the strategy of who might see what. The way I've got this set here, all teachers can see the whole great big repository. The math department teachers can see theirs. And the math department's so kind, they let the computer teachers see it also. And we all can see this even bigger repository that's going to be statewide called CCCS. So I'm searching for algebra, and I find a nice sample syllabus that was also put together by Jim Voss. And I'm going to go ahead and select that and use it. Now I just did that to show that I'm in my computer science course. And I've selected that. I'm going to create a dynamic link to it. And now it's in my course. I've got this sample syllabus that Jim put together. And this is another good example of where we'd be sharing for our teachers, particularly new teachers, a good example of putting together a good syllabus, a good schedule. And he's got some, well, we're a multi-campus community college, and one of our problems for the math teachers, they take their tests at testing centers, and they also have math labs at each of the campuses for special math help. Well, he's published the hours at each of our 3 campuses. And this is all here together in the content. Those of you that are familiar with Desire2Learn will know that this little link is what's called a quick link. And that just says I'm not really here. I'm a link to something that's somewhere else. And so that's what tells me this is a link back to the repository copy of this. One thing we can do with objects, and I think this will be very, very useful, is to review them. Review them just like a movie critic would review a movie. I can go through here, and I'm going to select this textbook. One of our nice online instructors is Eric Salahub, and he's got a wonderful learning community going with an English teacher, Shauna Van. They teach Philosophy 112 and English 090, the 2 courses as one thing. The students get 3 credits for one, 3 credits for the other. It's a 6-credit total, but they teach it like one big course. And it's really nicely done. And on top of that, Eric has written his own textbook, his own online textbook, which he makes available to students. And so this is a great example of something we should have out here to be shared across philosophy, if nothing else. So I'm going to get in here, and I've done a search on ethics, and I've come up with Eric's ethics textbook. I'm going to go ahead and if I click on this little button right here, it pops up all the things I can do with this particular learning object. And where I was coming from here, I've got a lot of privileges. I can look at all its details. I can even edit the metadata. I can delete it, which would be unusual. I'm actually in a full admin kind of role right here. But what I'm going to do is add a review. I'll click on Add Review, and it pops up an ability to select 0 to 5 stars. And down at the bottom here, I typed in some nice text. And that leaves behind a review that somebody would see that I put into place. It shows who made the review, what I said about it, and I gave it 5 stars. As people use the objects, this is something where we can go through and say, not only does it do all this stuff, but 3 different teachers thought it was great. Or potentially 3 different teachers or 4 different teachers thought it was so-so. You know, this could be useful when homing in on what you might want to use or not use. If we go back and do the search for this, there's now amongst the search results here a 5-star rated item that I found here. Publishing objects is fairly straightforward. If I get into content, if the privileges are turned on, I've got the ability to edit the metadata about an object, which is simply adding the categorizing kind of data about it and publishing it. If I click on Edit Metadata, which I've got highlighted here, it comes up with a window that lets me type in the title, the description, all those kinds of things that we might use. And like I said, we haven't really established what we're going to see. We haven't established what's in, what's out. This is where we could use a view of the metadata. We could say, for our purposes, we care about these 10 fields. And that's all we're going to show, that's all we're going to care about, and that's all that have to be populated. There are literally like 92 fields. I mean, there's a lot of stuff out here. And that's something that's going to take time to figure out what we really need to edit or not edit. Once I've got the data set for this, there's another icon on every content item called Publish. Publish this to a repository. So I'll click that, and I'll bring up the window here that lets me publish to a repository. Now this is where I can choose. The question came up earlier, can I just stick it anywhere? Well, I can stick it anywhere that I've got privileges. And I'm going to put this in a repository that I just created, and I'm going to try to sell this idea to my school. We should have a repository for the really good examples of what people have done well. And I call it Best Practices, and and Eric's Learning Community textbook is just an excellent example of something that ought to be out there for people to see. So this is publishing his ethics textbook to the Best Practices repository. And as we publish, we get a chance to look and see what we're really publishing. And he's just got 7 chapters as PDF files of his textbook. And we're going to put that out there. And it's successful, and now it's in the repository. You can go in and edit the data after the fact. I think I'll skip through this. I just showed that a minute ago. Now, quickly, I'm going to go through creating a repository in the first place. How am I doing on time, by the way? Would you? Okay, good. I got till 3:40. Is that right? 3:30. Okay. This is how we create a repository in the first place. At the moment that I made this capture, we only had 3 repositories. The big one that we use for playing, this is the statewide one that is really not used yet, but is going to be used. This is another one that I built for my own experiment. I'm about ready to build one more. So it comes up and it lets me create a new repository. I give it a name. I give it an order where it appears on the list. I give it a description, and I figure out if it's an approved or a draft status. We'll talk in a second about options there. And now we're going to figure out who can see it. I didn't show it, but it's already a repository for the math department to see. But the math department's really nice to me. They're really nice to our people. So they're going to let we computer science teachers see their stuff. So this is what they would do. They would search for an organization or some unit of organization within here. By department, we're going to pick CSC, and we're going to go through setting some trust and permissions here. Now, it's quite intricate. We'll talk in a second about the strategy for this, but there's about a dozen different specific things that a person can do with the repository, like publish to it, read from it, link to it, change it, etc. We're going to go here and say for given roles in the school, given roles as you're logged into a role, who can, within the CSC department, then again, this is still for people in computer science, what can they do to this math repository? Well, we're going to set it so they can read it, but they can't mess it up. It's not their repository to mess up. They can use it, but they can't change it. And now, CSC is a trusted organization to math. Creating the repositories is relatively easy. Figuring out all this exact right way of doing the trust and the privileges is going to be a little trickier. Real quickly, let me mention the options about metadata. I can tell right away that capturing the metadata is going to be a labor-intensive problem. Until we get procedures in place where the originator does it very reliably, predictably every time, people like Jim and his staff are going to end up capturing a lot of this on the side. And that's not the way to go. But the things you can do, you can export metadata to an XML file, which I did here for Eric's textbook. You can also import either from an XML file, or you can make a copy from another existing item. And I think that's what's going to work well. Get it right for one, and then copy it to several others, and then make the changes. And finally, you can go in directly, and you can have a template that sets default values in the first place, so that if we had common languages about rights, that would be there every time without everybody having to enter it in. Okay, now what I want to do, that was just a quick overview of the kind of the what we can do. The next section of this is something I picked up at the Fusion conference from a very nice presentation by one of the D2L people there. This is a little bit about, okay, what are our options? What are our strategies for building these things and making access to them? In general, these are the kinds of things we can do to the stuff in the repository. We can publish, we can add or update the data about it, we can search for it, we can use it, we can copy it out, and we can rate it and add reviews about it. In general, let's talk about I hate to use the word roles, because this is not a D2L formal role like they use the name. This is just the English word role. There's two things you can do. You can be a publisher to it and a consumer of it. Here's a list of all the specific things you can do or not do. And here's my first cut, my best recommendation that I'm going to make to my own school about what people should do. And an administrator like Jim should be able to do everything. If the administrators can't do everything, then we're in trouble. But the publishers, the people like myself as an online lead, or people that are designated as the leading instructors, should be able to publish and search and retrieve and do almost everything here, except I don't think we ought to be able to manage all objects, because that just means the ability to manage objects that I didn't put out there. I shouldn't be able to overwrite objects that I didn't put out there. And delete reviews, add new pedagogical classifications. I can get Jim to do that. At some point, we don't have to do everything. The end consumer doesn't need a lot of privilege. Search it, use it, add a review about it. So that's probably about all we're going to need.
Why not the reports instead?
I left that off because I don't know enough about it. I think it's more internal and more performance-oriented. I think the average person, some of the average teacher, and even myself, I'm not sure I could do much with it. But I just left it off because I didn't think I knew enough to put it in. Okay, this is something that is a little tricky at first, but there's a logic to this. Everybody in Desire2Learn is logged in at the moment in a role. You're a teacher, you're a student, you're a high-powered teacher, you're an online lead. These are the roles we've defined. But at any given moment, you have a role. Now, you also have designated permissions relative to these repositories. As a computer science instructor, I may have permissions to my own, but not to social science repository. So the combination of what you can do depends on who you are, what you're logged in as, and what you've been granted in terms of permission to see a repository. Now, I just mentioned that those are roles that we have. In general, I think that our administrators will do everything by definition, but our roles that we call online lead and program lead, very similar but not online, and high-powered instructor, these are the publishers. These are the people that are going to be designated as able to put stuff out there. Oh, well, these roles are part of our standard stuff. What I created was the LORs. Over the last 3 or 4 weeks, I got out there and just created these LORs and started populating and playing with privileges. So no, yeah. We front range have defined these roles. Maybe I stepped over that previous one. Right, and in fact, I didn't intend those to be roles. I intended that just to be English words describing what they're doing. That's not a formal role. These are the formal roles, and these are in our system now. Administrators, online lead instructors, program lead instructors, instructors with a little extra privileges, and everyday instructors. And these are formal D2L roles. And what I'm saying is that 3 of those roles should be what I call the publisher, the ability to put stuff out to it. And the instructor role, and of course these by default, are able to consume and take things out of it. In general, I just wanted to emphasize the issues of getting the permissions right. We may change these, but this is a good first cut at it. Now here's some configurations that Desire2Learn recommended, and I'm going to step through these fairly quickly. The first one is just trivial. Everybody gets to see everything. One big repository for all the teachers. And your access is limited only by what role you're in, whether you're an administrator or an instructor or an online lead. But we're not worried about one department having a repository over another. Now, this says one other strategy is the computer science department gets its own repository. Everybody else hands off. This is our stuff. The math department gets their own. The English department gets their own. The role permissions still apply. The people that can put it out there are the ones that are designated as the ones that can put it out there. But now we go through and now we just worry about one department at a time. I think in our world, this is going to have some appeal because people are worried about this getting out of hand and too complicated. And the math department might say, look, just give me a nice place to put my stuff. And let me manage it. And there's a certain logic to that. The third configuration that Desire2Learn mentioned was simply a combination of where you have all these individual department repositories, plus everybody gets to see the external access. Everybody gets to see the access defined to an external repository like Merlot or some of the OAI repositories. This one I liked, and this is what I used as a model for the nice math department, where one department's got a nice LOR, but they also let other departments see it. One department has their own storage, but they let other departments consume it. Why not? Let them have access to it too. And finally, the more interesting one, most complicated one anyway, is where there's 2 repositories for a given organization. One where everybody gets to throw stuff into it. But this is all proposed. This is all draft, if you will. This is in review. Anybody can put stuff out there, but some process decides what makes the cut and goes into the real production LOR that gets it into the classes. Now, this has got advantage, I think, because these people here would be responsible for getting the metadata right in the first place, and you're dividing the labor up a bit. There'd be a check process to make sure they got the data complete. And of course, there'd be a process to make sure it's good material, that we're not violating any copyrights, that we're not duplicating anything else. This could work. Okay. Here's what I've tried. I've created some LORs. Just got in and did it. I've got administrative access, at least temporarily. And just created some of these. I created one called Best Practices. I already mentioned I think we ought to have a common place that everybody gets to see where we post really good examples. And the side motivation here is that it might, people might feel a little bit better about publishing their stuff if there's a gold star with it. The reason it's published is that it's really good. everybody likes to feel good about their material. I created one called Online Computer Programs for Selfish Departments like my own that doesn't want to share with anybody. I created one for math departments like my friend Jim Voss who would let me see his stuff. I created one called Social Sciences and Social Sciences in Review as an example of the two-step. The review LOR followed by the actual approved LOR. And finally, I created one for external testing and haven't had a chance to do anything useful with it yet. I would hope to make links to outside external repositories, and that's what we still intend to do. It hasn't happened yet. Let me emphasize these are completely speculative. You're seeing this before the other front range teachers have seen it. So I haven't even had a chance to propose this to anybody yet, but I'm going to. And I thought it would be a good example for the sake of this presentation to give you a feel for what might happen. Whether we ever do it or not, this is what might work.
Sounds like a really good way also, we're moving into our accreditation process. This is a really good way to demonstrate that we are sharing best practices across departments.
Excellent comment. The comment is this is an excellent way to talk about sharing good practices and making sure that something that is developed, especially something that's developed under a grant where part of the grant says you're supposed to make it available to others. Here it is. Okay, question.
I'm wondering how decisions are going to be made about how many repositories there should be. How big, access will
Painfully. Yeah. Well, the short thing is there's two things that'll go. I mean, the ultimate will be, the online dean will decide, and there's a new academic vice president who's the boss of the online dean. But we have a committee of senior instructors like myself, I'm on it, called the Learning Technology Advisory Committee. And that's where I would take this first. And we've been pretty successful at coming up with things and proposing them to the rest of the school. So there's sort of a senior committee that would be the first place here. And we also have this position called online lead. The person who's responsible for discipline by discipline, the online courses across the school. And the collective online leads meet, and I'll propose this to them as well. And it would take a good, strong majority of those two organizations to get anywhere.
In addition to that, and building on what you have here, how do you plan to administer users and rights? Because it seems like a fairly cumbersome process with the math department with that, all the math professors, and then the students that you want to have access.
The question is, how are we going to administer the rights on this? And I don't know is the first answer, but I'm guessing that as simple as possible will work. I don't think students will ever have access to this. This is for the designers of courses to build courses. It's exclusively faculty, number one. And I would guess that the math online lead and the math program leads at each of our campuses would have the rights to decide the process for a math LOR. That's what I would recommend. Again, I'm just getting the ball rolling here, and it's going to be tough. I'm not sure where this is going to lead in the end. I'm smiling because I'm causing problems here. Those of you that know me know that I just actually retired in the spring. This is one of the last things I'm doing in my job. So I'm creating a bit of a controversy here and walking away from it. But I think there's potential here, and sort of like the chicken and egg picture. I'm a big believer in small step successes. I'd like one department. I think math is going to be a good example because they have things they need to share, very specific to math, a lot of third-party stuff, and they all have good technical attitude about this. So like maybe we'll create a math department LOR, let them monitor it for a year, and see what happens. I don't think we'll try to do this all at once, but I think we ought to get off the ground with it. Now, underlying all of this, and the reason I was asked to even do this in the first place, is that the state system has got to decide, are we going to renew the license to this? So far, the state hasn't put this to a lot of good use. And so the underlying question that I'm trying to help answer is, are we going to pay for another year or 2 or 3 of it? And I have no idea where that's going. I think we are. But I was asked to come up with some suggestions for how we should do this. And there's a committee of teachers across the state that work this. How much time I got left now? I'm at 0, okay. Well, I don't think I need to go through here. Let me just mention that I've created several of these that meet those here. Let me just bring this one in. Got to show my cloud picture. This is the one that I think is most interesting, but got the most potential. Is that everybody gets to publish, and I like the idea about dividing up the labor of that. And somehow there'll be an approval process. I don't know what it would be, and then it would come out to the actual approved LOR here. Let me just walk away with this. Although I love my chicken and egg. This is that chicken and egg situation. We gotta do something to get the ball started here. But for those of you that are really interested in this, there is a volunteer users group within D2L, the D2L community, headed by Steve Vance of Portland Community College. And these two people here are really the best sources in the whole world on this. Jane Costello at Memorial University in Newfoundland and Vicky McGarvey at Nottingham Trent in England have done remarkable work, and they're sharing it very generously with everybody. So those of you that are going to look at this, feel free to contact any of them, and that's your best source. And feel free to join that group. We meet once a month online just to talk over these problems. And in general, most people are in the same boat we are, trying to figure out how to get off the ground. Okay, but
Yeah, I'm sorry. Thank you, Steve. But if you've heard us mention the Desire2Learn community, community.desire2learn.com, you will have to ask to be able to register for it. You'll have to prove that you're a faculty member and not a student trying to give you inside information. But it's a very useful site.
oh, I should have given more credit. Rafi Syed at Desire2Learn was just great to me. He gave me all sorts of good stuff, and he is the technical guy who's in charge of making this work within Desire2Learn. So he's a wonderful contact also. Okay, and fill out these.